Hello, everybody. How are you?
Hello.
Hello. I am getting over a cold, so hopefully I don't cough as I am speaking. So I'm here just to tell you about my story, where I got started and where I am today. So it begins when I was 29. I was fine one day and chronically ill the next. Suddenly, out of nowhere, I was in pain, exhausted all the time. My brain didn't seem to work the same way anymore, and I had no idea that my life would never be the same again. It would take me 11 years just to get a diagnosis of Lyme disease, and another decade after that before I finally learned how to truly heal myself. In the beginning, I went to every doctor imaginable: MDs, functional medicine doctors, psychologists, and energy healers. That's where my Reiki journey began. Nothing seemed to stick. I'd get my hopes up only to land back where I started, sick and struggling. When the diagnosis of Lyme disease finally came, I decided to do the treatment even though so much time had passed. For 3 months, I sat in the clinic 5 days a week for 4 hours a day with antibiotics running through a PICC line in my arm where I still have a scar. I left the treatment center feeling worse than when I started, and it took months to recover. But eventually my symptoms settled down to a level where I could at least manage in the world. Still, life was a daily endurance test. I woke up every morning feeling like I had been hit by a bus. Everything hurt, my brain was foggy, chronic fatigue ruled my days, but somehow I kept going. Through the first decade of illness, I got married, I went back to art school, I worked as a designer and moved several times and eventually went through a divorce. But it all wasn't bad. I had this dream of leaving my full-time job to be a self-employed artist, which seemed impossible. The problem was I had no idea what kind of art I even wanted to create. I was doing mostly graphic work on the computer and I rarely painted. By the time I got home from work at night, I was way too exhausted to try. So one night I was lying in bed and I was overwhelmed by all the ideas in my head and just too tired to try anything. So I wanted so badly to paint. And then I heard this small little voice come in to paint in bed. And I thought, you're crazy. How was I going to paint in bed? But then I realized watercolors could work. They were easy, they weren't messy. So I grabbed some paints and I started painting flowers. I had always painted flowers were a part of all my graphic work. And so I just started painting flowers. I had so much fun exploring and playing. And for the first time, I wasn't noticing my fatigue because I was comfortable in bed and I was able to paint. That first night changed everything. I bought one of those little carts that you can roll over the bed like they have in hospitals. And it was big enough to fit my water, my paper, and I was all set. And from there, it just kind of took off. I spent the next year practicing, developing a style, and dreaming bigger. And I knew if I could just leave my full-time job, I could build an art licensing portfolio. So art licensing is something that I had learned from my previous jobs. And it's when you create artwork and then license it to manufacturers to be put on products like greeting cards and fabric and dinnerware. Instead of selling the original art, you give the companies the rights to the art, they make the products, and then you get paid a royalty. The tricky part with art licensing is that it can take up to 18 months to actually get paid from the time you sign the contract, and there's no guarantee that you'll make any money because you have no idea how that product will sell. So it was a huge gamble. But I decided to take the risk because I still had that voice in my head that was telling me that that's what I needed to do. And so I listened. And through synchronistic events, I landed some freelance contracts with Home Goods and Lennox and that was like my financial bridge that I was able to leave my full-time job. So I could be home, do this freelance work, and then start working on my licensing portfolio. From there, I poured myself into building my portfolio. I found a licensing agent and officially started my art business. Since then, my art has been on greeting cards and calendars and dinnerware, shower curtains, you name it. And I brought some examples, and there's some set up in the back of the room. And I know for everybody on Zoom, it's hard to see, but I have greeting cards with art on it, hundreds of greeting cards. It's been about 14 years since this all started. Fabrics, quilting fabrics, you name it. Yeah, it's been really a blessing. Dinnerware, so many things, and there's more in the back. I have some things on my website if you wanted to see more. And so this journey was this huge blessing. So I had made it, whatever it is, right? That should have been the end of the story, but something kept nudging me, something that voice kept telling me that there was more. I've always been into the spiritual side of life. I was woo-woo since I was a teenager. And I felt this call to blend the art with the spiritual, but I didn't know what that was or what that looked like. And I drove people crazy for years trying to figure it out. The fawn knows. I call her all the time in angst. I knew somehow that the art itself needed to heal people. And it would take me years to figure out what that meant. And meanwhile, life was shifting. I got divorced. I sold my house. I moved from the Lake Nockamixon area back to Chester County to be near my family. And for a while, I was single and blissfully independent. When you live alone, it's very safe. You do what you want when you want. You don't have to push yourself. And there's a lot of freedom, especially for a work from home artist with a studio in her house that could paint in her PJs all day long. I thought, this is good. I'm good. Like, this is it. But then no. For some reason, I decided to start dating. I don't know why, but I did. And I met Anthony, and life felt full. I thought, okay, this is it. I'm good. This is my life now, and I was going to figure out how to live it to the fullest, even with my health issues, like easy, no problem. Nope. So little did I know, I was about to enter a new dark night of the soul, a journey that would take me to the depths and lead me to the path of finally learning how to heal myself. We were just coming out of COVID when I met Anthony in August of 2020. My relationship was new and exciting, and I gave it all my energy. And then things took a turn. In January of 2021, I lost my dad, and it was devastating. Not long after that, my mom had a heart attack, most likely from a broken heart. Around the same time, I was kicked out of my house. I had been renting this adorable cottage on a 30-acre horse farm. And for some reason, the landlady got it in her head that I was going to be moving out to move in with Anthony, which we had no plans of doing. And she wanted to beat me to it. I found this out later. And she told me I had a month to get out, which was crazy. Although it's a very good story, because I always like to tell people how Anthony got me kicked out of my dream house. So I know, poor Aunt. Then, unbelievably, I got Lyme disease again. This time it was very obvious. I had all the classic symptoms, and I even had a positive test, which I did not have before. That was a true test of resilience for me, because we brought up so many emotions, but I made it through, and the symptoms eventually improved. And the thing that was interesting about it is I didn't realize that for the longest time, I had it in my head that I'm never going to get better. Like, I had settled into all those symptoms for so long that I just never thought that I would heal. And so here came the Lyme disease again, and it taught me that you can heal, the symptoms can go away. And then also that my symptoms that I still had maybe weren't Lyme disease anymore. So there were a lot of growth was starting to happen. So I was still dragging around all the other stuff, old wounds, patterns, stress. I had a ton of things happen in this short amount of time. I had a falling out with my best friend for forever. I moved into an apartment with a gas leak that, caused asthma issues. Then I got COVID, which took me months to recover from. and added a whole other layer of exhaustion on top of everything else. And eventually I moved in with Anthony, which did not go very smoothly at first. Two 50-somethings, each living their life their own way, coming together and figuring out how to live together was not easy. Through all of these things, especially my relationship with Anthony, I was forced to confront my own issues. It led me deeper into shadow work, where I realized I had some very deep-rooted patterns that had kept me stuck for most of my life. Many of them tied back to growing up with a narcissistic mother with a mood disorder. And all of this eventually ended with the passing of my mom this past year in April. It was heartbreaking, but also became part of my healing journey, bringing up layers I had to face and release, and showing me how far I had come in all this time. But in the middle of all that, and there were so many things that happened, it was like one thing after another thing, and it became so obvious that I was in this growth period that I became very aware of the things that were happening, and I was paying attention. And I think because of that, I started to do the work, and I started to dig and really examine what was going on in my life and start to clear a lot of things. So as I was doing that and as I was clearing, glimmers started to show up. One night I stumbled onto YouTube and suddenly found a video about something called DPDR, depersonalization, derealization. Has anybody ever heard of that? Mm-hmm. So I had never heard of it. And there was this one symptom that I had that I never talked about, because anytime I tried to explain it to doctors or other people, they would think I was crazy. It was like there was this glass wall, this veil between me and the world. And so my perception was off. And how do you explain that to people? The best way I can describe it, which is like the worst way to describe it, is that if you ever go into a restaurant in the daytime and have like a glass of wine or a beer, and you have like a tiny little buzz, and then you go outside in the daylight and you're like, wow, this feels kind of funky. That was my perception all the time, but without the fun. So, and there was also this weird thing where I could see static in my field of vision. If I caught the light just right, there would be all this static, and it was bizarre. And that was my reality for 20 years. So when I saw this video and heard someone describe the exact symptoms, even the static, I couldn't believe it. And for the first time, I realized I wasn't crazy and this thing had a name. I learned that I had chronic anxiety disorder. And though I had always been calm and laid back on the outside, like the perfect person you want with you in an emergency, inside, I had been living in a freeze state for decades and didn't even know it. And this is what happens when the nervous system becomes dysregulated. Instead of being able to shift between fight and flight, rest and digest, it gets stuck in survival mode. My system thought it was protecting me, but it really just kept me disconnected, fatigued, and trapped in a cycle of stress. That realization changed everything, and it opened the door to nervous system regulation, which became the real path to healing for me. And then Lyme disease struck a third time, but this time it was a blessing. It led me deeper into research, where I discovered something called limbic system impairment. Has anybody heard of that? Limbic system impairment. So the limbic system is the part of the brain that handles emotion, memory, and threat detection. When it's impaired, whether through trauma, chronic illness, or long-term stress, it basically gets stuck, and it keeps sending out danger signals even when you're safe. That means your body stays in survival mode, and you keep experiencing symptoms long after your original illness or trauma has passed. So here is the important part. When your limbic system is stuck like that, it can actually create very real symptoms in your body. Things like food sensitivities, chemical mold sensitivities, and even mysterious illnesses that don't show up clearly on tests. Many people develop chronic fatigue, fibromyalgia, POTS, long COVID, and unexplained pain, brain fog, and autoimmune-like disorders. The symptoms are real, your body feels the pain, but they're being driven by a brain that is looping danger signals over and over again. And so this is something new that people are discovering. A lot of people with mystery illnesses and like chronic fatigue syndrome are starting to do the work of neuroplasticity and being healed from all their symptoms. So it's a pretty exciting time. So that discovery led me to a program called DNRS, Dynamic Neural Retraining System. It's a neuroplasticity program designed to retrain the brain, calm the limbic system, and teach the nervous system that is safe. So within weeks of starting this, my symptoms began to miraculously lift. And for the first time in decades, I felt clear, calm, and better than I had since I was a teenager, all from doing these very simple exercises. And this is where everything just started to come together. I began using my art differently, not for licensing, not for sales, but as a healing tool for myself and my nervous system. That was the birth of Paint Your Way to Peace. It's a practice where watercolor becomes more than art. It becomes a way to regulate the nervous system, to shift your energy, and to invite calm and healing in. So I have a bunch of other stuff written here, but basically we do very simple exercises. Thank you, Mike. We do very simple exercises like this one here. They're just tick marks. And there's two ways to do it. You can have a metronome going, and as the metronome is going, you're painting tick, 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 or you're counting 1, 2, 3, 4. Very simple, but there's something so relaxing about it that it just puts you into this very relaxed state for your nervous system. And so a lot of just different, very, very simple exercises. So you see that anybody can do these exercises. And while we're doing them, we are practicing breath work. We are practicing some different nervous system regulation tools. I'm doing Reiki on people, sound healing. And we are just having just a lovely, relaxed time. And the idea is that you can then take these exercises home and make it part of your healing practice. So that is Paint Your Way to Peace. And it is what I was searching for all that time, to make art a healing tool. So, the benefits go far beyond the page. People tell me when they leave the sessions that they feel lighter and calmer, more centered in their bodies, and more connected to their own journey. What started as a private practice in my own healing journey has grown into online courses, and now I'm honored to be teaching here at Circle of Miracles. So that's my story. It's been a long road from illness to inspiration, from painting in bed to licensing collections around the world, and from surviving to truly healing. So I just would like to thank you all for being here. And that's my story. Thank you.